Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about Alfa Romeo because they are not doing all that well in the US market today. Before we get into this video though, as always, if you're going to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. Let's get into it. So we're going to start things off by going over Alfa Romeo's sales figures so that those of you watching can decide if you believe that Alfa is struggling in the US market. So Alfa re-entered the US market back in 2015 with the 4C, right? A super exotic little sports car, carbon fiber tub, dual clutch, lots of fun stuff with that. And back then, they were selling less than 100 units per month on average. Again, the 4C is a very niche car. It's like the size of a Mazda Miata, so you wouldn't expect that to sell in huge numbers. But, you know, for being a niche brand with a niche car, they did pretty well. 2016 was more of the same. In 2017, they brought in the Giulia, right? A sports sedan to compete against something like the BMW 3 Series, and they started to sell more units. They, in January that year, 108 units, and then February 400, and then March over 500 units, right? So things started to pick up quite a bit. And then 2018 brought in the Stelvio, their sporty SUV, and 2018, they were selling well over 1,000 units per month. They had some months where they sold over 2,000 units. And so Alfa Romeo from 2015 to 2018 literally went from zero to hero. They went from selling basically no cars in the US market to selling 20,000 units plus in the US market. Now this trend continued through 2019, 2020, and 2021. 2020, there was a little bit of a hiccup because of the pandemic situation in March, but they recovered pretty quickly. But 2022 came around and sales started to decline. They, had a pretty big decline. They went from about, 1,400, 1,600 units per month in terms of sales to around 1,000. And now 2023 hasn't finished yet, but we're getting to the end of the year, and they're selling fewer than 1,000 units per month, like 700 to 800 units per month. I think they had 1 month, August, where they sold 1,000 units. But that's literally a 50% decline from their peak. They went from 20,000 units a year to now they're pacing for like 10,000 units in the US market. And so this niche brand just became a whole lot more niche. Again, I'll let you guys decide what you think those figures mean, but I quickly want to go over the reasons as to why I think that Alfa Romeo is struggling so much in the US market as someone who reviews cars for a living. So the first reason is that their lineup is not all that big. And so when you have your eggs all in one basket as an automaker, that means it can be very feast or famine depending on what people are looking for in the market. So Alfa, as of right now, has 2 crossovers. They've got the Stelvio and they have the Tonale, and then they have the Giulia. They got rid of the 4C. And so they have 2 crossovers and then a sedan. And so we all know in the US market, everyone likes trucks and SUVs, and so the crossovers could still do pretty well. The Giulia, right, it's going to be more of a niche thing already because people just are going away from sedans. But the sales trends show that people are not really looking for smaller luxury crossovers anymore. If they're looking at luxury cars, they're looking at the, more of like the mid-size, the larger luxury SUVs. And then if they're looking at smaller crossovers, they're looking at non-luxury. That's just what the sales trend shows. So like Toyota RAV4s, selling very well, and that's similar in size to like a Stelvio. But then you look at the luxury brands, BMW X5, X7, Mercedes GLS, GLE, those bigger SUVs, those are selling well, but then Mercedes GLC or, BMW X3, those ones aren't selling as well. And so depending on what the market wants at any given time, when you have as small of a lineup as Alfa, that means that things could either be really good or really bad, again, depending on what people are looking for. So I think that's the first reason as to why Alfa is struggling. The next reason is the particular segments that they decided to go in regards to what their brand is about. So they came out with the 4C, right? Super exciting, like sexy looking, fun to drive car. That felt like an Alfa, right? And then you have the Giulia come out and it's this super sexy sedan that has this crazy quadrifoglio variant with a Ferrari-derived V6, like very exciting car. And so that felt very Alfa-like. Now the Stelvio, right, was Alfa trying to appeal to the US market and actually did really well upon release because it's, different looking than a lot of other crossovers in the luxury market. It handles a lot better. And again, that quadrifoglio variant, absolutely insane. I mean, 500 horsepower, all-wheel drive crossover that is not all that, it's the size of a Porsche Macan. It's the size of a BMW X3. Like, it's not big. It's got a lot of power. So even though the SUV was less Alfa because it was an SUV. They did it well enough that it worked. However, Alfa has now gotten rid of the 4C, so they don't have a sports car anymore. They you know, the Quadrifoglio with the Giulia, kind of a sports car, but you know, they don't have a two-door sports car. And then they've released their, you know, newest product, the Tonale. And the Tonale is a crossover just like the Stelvio, but it has a hybrid engine. It's a plug-in hybrid, very small displacement. It's a 3-cylinder, like 1.3 liter, something like that. It's 1.2, 1.3 liter. I reviewed one a while ago. I can't remember. Sorry about that. Should have been better prepared for this video. But the point that I'm trying to make is not an exotic powertrain whatsoever. Like the twin-turbo V6, again, Ferrari-derived V6 in the Quadrifoglio, super exciting, super exotic. A hybrid 3-cylinder, right? It's like, come on, that's it's like a Prius engine, basically. And so I think that it really like pulled a lot of wind out of the sail for Alfa because everyone went, oh, so this company went from making these super fun, you know, cool looking exotic cars that were reasonably priced to now they're building Priuses, basically. I mean, this is what I've heard from people that watch my videos is they're like, I was interested in Alfa despite some of the other things that I'll talk about in this video, but now that they're not really going to be focusing on building what I deem as a cool, exciting car because it has an exciting powertrain and beautiful styling, I'm no longer interested in Alfa Romeo. And then the last thing that I think really, you know, hindered Alfa Romeo is the dealership / servicing network. So Alfa Romeo being a niche brand meant that most Alfa Romeo dealerships were a part of other dealerships. And so, you know, that could kind of make the sales experience a little bit weird for customers because the salesperson they might work with might not know anything about Alfas because it's like they sell other cars and then occasionally they'll sell an Alfa because the dealership decided to bring that franchise into their dealer group. So I think that definitely hurt the customer experiences. Customers going in and telling, you know, maybe a salesperson what they wanted and the salesperson didn't know anything that they were talking about. That happens with other brands, but yeah, definitely a thing with Alfa. And then the servicing, right? Again, it's more of a niche brand, and so there weren't as many dealers that supported servicing with Alfas, and so that meant that if you bought a car and you didn't live like right next to the Alfa dealership, then you might have to make a trip out of just servicing it. And then on top of that, right, they didn't exactly have the best reliability track record. And so the chances of you having to service the car more often were higher, and so it's like not only will you have to probably drive longer to get it serviced because there's not as many places to service it, but you might be servicing it more often. And then I feel like the nail in the coffin is the servicing was not insanely expensive, but it was, you know, sometimes a lot more expensive than what you might find with competitors in the segment from like BMW and Audi and Mercedes, for example. And a big part of that is, you know, what you'd see is Alfa Romeo dealerships might be paired with like a, you know, a Ferrari or a Maserati dealership. And so it's like they're charging Ferrari and Maserati service charges on these Alfa Romeos that are $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. So putting that all together, I think that that is why Alfa Romeo is struggling in the US market. They've got a small lineup, right? So that's going to make it so that they're going to be kind of more boom or bust because of that small lineup. And it feels like they're going away from what people love about the brand, right? They still have the exotic styling, but they no longer have the exotic powertrains outside of the Quadrifoglio that they still make, but they don't really make those in super big numbers. And then the servicing dealership network, right? That's always going to be a struggle with niche brands. But I think that if the niche brands, you know, emphasize, and I'll give an example with Mini, I think they do a really good job where if they emphasize the dealership experience, they make sure that people have a good experience, even though it's a smaller brand, then it'll keep people coming back. And if they stay true to the brand, right? I think Mini is a good example of both of those things. Anyways, let me know your thoughts on Alfa Romeo. I'll see you.